You're lying in bed, it's Tuesday night, your phone lights up, another notification from your bank, your account balance is below 1,000, and there you are doing that thing we all do, that mental math, car payment, mortgage, kids' activities, and you realize something weird. You're making more money than ever before, but you feel more broke than ever. Sound familiar? Here's the thing, nobody tells you your 40s don't decide if you'll be rich. They decide if your future will feel calm or chaotic. And trust me, those are two completely different things. I'm Will, and I think about money a lot, not just the numbers, but the feelings behind it. The way our money choices today shape our lives years from now. And what I've learned is this: your 40s are a fork in the road. Most people walk right past it without even noticing. The path you pick now quietly determines your next 20 years. Will you wake up at 60 with choices, or will you wake up with bills you still have to pay? If any of this hits home, go ahead and subscribe. This channel is about seeing money differently. And if this video helps you even a little bit, hit that like button so I know to make more like this. Let me tell you why your 40s are so different from every other decade of your life. Most people think building wealth is about making more money. And yeah, income matters, I won't lie to you, but here's what the research actually shows. About half of Americans feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. And here's the crazy part: it's not just people making $40,000 a year. Even people making six figures feel the same way. You bought a house, you bought two cars, and suddenly all your money disappears into bills. This is the trap of your 40s. You're earning more than you ever have, but you're also spending more than you ever have. And the gap between those two numbers, that's what determines everything. Let me show you two different paths. Path A looks successful: big house in a nice neighborhood, two new cars in the driveway, maybe a gym membership you barely use, country club fees, streaming services you forgot you have. But underneath, every single dollar is already spent before you earn it. Your bills eat up 70% or 80% of what you make. When something unexpected happens, and something always happens, you either swipe a credit card or drain whatever tiny savings you've built up. You're not broke, but you're not free either. You're stuck, living in what experts call scarcity mode, always thinking about the next bill, the next payment, the next expense. It never stops. Path B looks less impressive from the outside. Maybe your car is a few years older. Maybe your house is a bit smaller than what the bank said you could afford. But here's the difference: you have breathing room. 20 or 30% of your income isn't already spoken for. When an opportunity shows up, an investment, a career change, a chance to take time off for something important, you can actually say yes. You're not in survival mode. You're building something. And then here's the secret: the difference between these two paths usually isn't income, it's decisions. The decisions you make in your 40s about your monthly bills. Let me tell you why this decade is so critical. In your 20s and 30s, you have time. You can mess up and bounce back, save nothing until you're 32. You've still got 30 plus years to grow that money. Take a career risk that flops. You have decades to recover. But in your 40s, the math changes. Not because it's too late, it's definitely not, but because every decision you make now has more weight. Like, you still have time, but you don't have unlimited do-overs anymore. Here's an example. The stock market historically returns about 10% per year on average, but that only helps you if you're actually invested. And here's the uncomfortable truth: the average 401k balance for people in their 40s is around $150,000. Some have more, some have less. But when you compare that to what most people think they need, over $1 million, there's a massive gap. So what closes that gap? It's not Bitcoin. It's not a hot stock tip. It's not real estate speculation. It's something way more boring and way more powerful: the decisions you make about your monthly expenses. Let me give you some real numbers. The average new car payment right now, about $750 per month for a used car, about $530. And most families have two cars. So let's say you're paying $1,400 a month total between two car payments. Over 6 years, that's over $100,000 just in car payments. Now imagine, instead of buying two new cars, you bought reliable used ones with cash, something 5 or 6 years old that you own outright. That $700 difference every month, invest in a basic index fund earning 7% per year. That grows to over $100,000 in 10 years. One decision, just cars. Now let's talk about houses. Most homeowners spend about 21% of their income on housing, but in expensive cities, families are spending 30%, 40%, even 50% just on the house. The government says if you're spending more than 30% on housing, you're cost burdened. And right now, over half of renters and nearly a quarter of homeowners fall into that category. Here's what this means: if you locked yourself into the biggest house you could afford at age 38, you're paying for that decision until you're 68. Every month, that giant mortgage payment takes money that could be growing and sends it to the bank instead. I'm not saying never buy a nice car or a nice house. What I'm saying is this: in your 40s, these decisions have permanent consequences. The choices you make now don't just affect next month. They ripple into your 50s and 60s and decide whether you have options or obligations. Let's talk about what happens in your brain when you're stressed about money. Researchers have found something called the scarcity mindset. When people feel like they don't have enough time, money, whatever, their brains work differently. They get tunnel vision. All their mental energy focuses on immediate problems, making it harder to think long term. Think about it. Your car breaks down and you don't have emergency savings. Your brain goes into panic mode. All you can think about is, how do I pay for this right now? You're not thinking about retirement. You're not thinking about career opportunities. You're just trying to make it to Friday. But here's what's wild. This doesn't just happen to poor people. Well, someone making 150,000 but spending $145,000 can feel the exact same stress as someone making way less. The scarcity mindset doesn't just feel bad; it actually makes you make worse decisions. The financial stress eats up your mental energy, leaving less brain power for everything else. People in this state make more short-term choices, borrow more than they should, and put off important financial moves because they can't see past the immediate crisis. And this is why your 40s matter so much. The goal isn't just more money. The goal is enough margin so your brain can shift from survival mode to growth mode. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, something incredible happens. You stop jumping every time your phone buzzes. You stop lying awake doing math about whether you can afford to fix the heater. That constant low grade stress, it lifts. And suddenly you have mental space for other things, thinking strategically about your career, noticing opportunities you were too stressed to see before, being present with your family instead of constantly worried. According to recent surveys, only about 55% of Americans have enough saved to cover 3 months of expenses. That means almost half of adults are one bad month away from disaster. And here's the tragedy: building an emergency fund is one of the best investments you can make. Not because of interest earned, but because of stress removed. The psychological value of having 6 months of expenses sitting there is enormous. I know it changes everything. Let me talk about what happens when you do build that cushion. When you create margin, you get what I call walk away money. Not enough to retire, but enough that you don't have to take the first job offer that comes along. Enough that you can negotiate from strength instead of desperation. Think about your career. Your boss asks you to do something unethical, or your company goes in a bad direction, or you get a job offer that requires moving but offers real growth. If you're living paycheck to paycheck with no savings, you have zero leverage. You have to say yes to things you hate and no to opportunities you want just because you can't afford any disruption. But if you have 6 months saved, if your monthly bills are low enough that you could survive a gap in employment, everything changes. You can push back on that unreasonable demand. You can take that calculated risk. You can invest in yourself, pay for a course, attend a conference, because you're playing offense instead of defense. And this creates a cycle: better financial position, more confidence, better career choices, better financial position. People who feel stuck in their careers are usually the same people stuck in their finances. It's not a coincidence. Now, let's talk about the traps, the mistakes that quietly destroy years of progress. Trap number one: lifestyle creep. You get a raise, within 6 months, your spending rises to match it. Research shows that high income households often have the same financial stress as middle income households because their spending scales up with their earnings. The fix: the 50% rule. When you get a raise, automatically save at least half before you adjust your lifestyle. Let your lifestyle improve, sure, but let your savings improve faster. Trap number two: treating savings like a piggy bank. You hit $50,000 in your retirement account and celebrate by buying a boat. You build up your emergency fund and then use it for vacation. I get it. You worked hard for that money. But the point of savings isn't to have money to spend, it's to have money working for you. Every time you raid your nest egg, you reset the clock on growth. Trap number three: housing upgrades. You have equity in your house, you refinanced or upgraded, now you're in a bigger house worth more, sure, but you're also paying a bigger mortgage every month for the next 30 years. Today, families typically need to spend 38% of their income just to afford a median priced home. In many cities, it's even worse. Housing has become the single biggest barrier to building wealth. No, trap number four: car decisions. I mentioned the $750 average new car payment, but get this: nearly 20% of new car buyers now have monthly payments of $1,000 or more. Over 22% are taking 7-year loans just to make the numbers work. By the time you pay off a 7-year car loan, the car is worth almost nothing, and you're ready for another one. It becomes a treadmill that never stops. These aren't moral failures, they're normal things normal people do. Our economy encourages them, but normal isn't the same as smart. And in your 40s, when decisions have bigger consequences, it's worth asking, do you want to do what's normal or what actually helps your future self? So, what should you do instead? Here are some principles, not rules, because your situation is unique. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone who thinks about this stuff first. Know your savings rate, but not your income. What percentage of your take-home pay are you actually keeping? Experts recommend saving 15% for retirement, but most Americans save less than 5%. The gap between those numbers is where stress lives. Second, focus on lowering fixed costs over increasing income. Sounds backwards, right? But a dollar saved from monthly bills is worth more than a dollar earned because it's after tax and permanent. Cut your monthly expenses by $500. That's like earning an extra $6,000, $7,000 every year, forever. Third, automate everything. Willpower is limited. If you rely on motivation to save, you'll fail. But if you set up automatic transfers to savings on payday, it happens without thinking. This isn't about discipline. It's about systems that don't need discipline. Fourth, think in opportunity costs. Every purchase has a shadow cost. What else that money could become? Buy a $45,000 car. You're not just spending $45,000, you're giving up what that money could grow into. Over 20 years at 7% returns, that's over $170,000. I'm not saying never buy nice things. I'm saying know what they actually cost. Fifth, protect your margin. Once you build buffer between income and expenses, guard it fiercely. This is your most valuable financial asset in your 40s, more valuable than any investment. Margin gives you options. Margin lets you sleep at night. Here's what it comes down to. Your 40s are a turning point, but not a deadline. You still have time. You still have decades of potential growth ahead, but the window for easy fixes is closing. No, the decisions you make now will echo into retirement in ways your 20s decisions never did. Financial stress isn't caused by not having enough. It's caused by exposure, by having too little buffer between you and the next disruption. Reduce that exposure and the future gets quieter. Build margin between your income and expenses, and you'll be amazed at how different life feels. I know this covered a lot, and I know changing financial direction in your 40s feels overwhelming when you've got kids and mortgages and careers and all the chaos of adult life. But here's my point. Small changes compound too. You don't have to fix everything overnight. You just have to start making decisions that serve your 60-year-old self instead of just your right now self. So let me ask you, what's one financial decision from your past you do differently if you could go back? What would you tell your younger self about money? Drop that in the comments. I read every single one, and we can all learn from each other's experiences. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button. It helps the channel. And if you want more content about the psychology of money, about building real financial security instead of just chasing bigger paychecks, subscribe and turn on notifications. Your 40s aren't the end of your financial story. They're the chapter where you decide how the story ends. Make it a good one.